I want to start with thanking everybody for being here. We're really looking forward to the next 45 minutes we're going to spend talking about women in entrepreneurship. Before we get started with this webinar, I have a little bit of housekeeping to take care of and then a little bit of background into NCET 2 and this webinar series. So we will go ahead and get started. The first thing is if you need to log out early or you just really want to rewatch this webinar, you can find it at the NCET 2 website. That's ncet2.org. We're going to be posting a recording of this webinar within 24 hours. And additionally, if you have any questions for us or you want to get involved with NCET 2, do not hesitate to contact us. You can reach us at support@ncet2.org. Secondly, the end of our webinar is going to be a question and answer session with the audience. And to ask questions, you go to your control panel on the GoToWebinar software, and you scroll down to the bottom and submit them through a chat. We will get them and we will post them and answer them to the best of our abilities. So to start with today's agenda, we're going to go into a little bit of a brief introduction just about NCET 2 and the Women and Minorities Committee that has created this webinar for y'all. We're going to talk about the webinar, its goals, and then we're also going to start with a poll just so we can see where our audience is coming from. We'll move on to women and minority issues and entrepreneurship at universities. Saba and I will speak a little bit about what we do at Texas Tech and how we involve our university and push INE innovation entrepreneurship culture. We'll move on to a question and answer with Gwen Walker. We'll talk about her journey from an internship to an entrepreneur. We'll go to a question and answer with Audrey Horst. She is a university entrepreneur and she has a pretty unique experience to talk about. And finally, we will end with a question and answer with our audience. So to get started, I just want to talk a little bit about the webinar series. We know that startups are important to our economy. We know they breed a lot of jobs and innovation is essential. So this series is going to highlight the players in the startup economy, and we really want to get a glimpse and broaden our understanding about their important roles. So we're going to talk to entrepreneurs, students, researchers, and universities and see what they're doing to really build a startup nation. In addition to this, it's also hosted by college students and interns within NCET 2. So it's an experiential learning program that links us with startups, with researchers, and additionally with Congress and entrepreneurs and venture capitalists. Lastly, NCET 2 is an organization. It's a National Council for Entrepreneurial Tech Transfer. It serves as a giant bridge between universities, between Congress, between Fortune and Global 1000 companies and angels and VCs. And their mission is to really strengthen the innovation and entrepreneurial network. The Women and Minorities Committee that is producing this podcast is a subset of NCET 2. And what we're doing is trying to enhance our role of women and minorities within the startup and innovation community. Okay, before I get started, I want to do a quick poll just to see where our audience is at, what kind of demographics we're looking at. It should pop up here in a second. Alrighty, so interesting. We're looking at a majority of working professionals, a good amount of students, faculty, and then other. I don't have any from the retired section, but thanks y'all for taking that. All right, moving back, I just want to give a brief introduction to our presenters today. They'll further discuss their backgrounds and what they're up to when we talk to them in the question and answer. But we're going to speak with Gwen Walker. She is from Albuquerque, New Mexico. working in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She founded Albuquerque Soul Sisters, a running club, and she is also a University of Notre Dame alum. We'll also speak with Audrey Horst. She is a Boston University PhD student and NCET 2 University Entrepreneur Fellow. With us, we have Saba Nafis. She is a Texas Tech PhD student, a University Innovation Fellow, and then an NCET 2 University Entrepreneur Fellow. And lastly, I have myself. I'm Alex Horace. I am a Texas Tech undergraduate, a University Entrepreneur Fellow, and an NCET 2 University Entrepreneur Fellow. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Saba. She's going to discuss a little bit of statistics and issues that U.S. Women and minorities are facing currently.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you all for being here. So I'm going to take the next few minutes to talk a little bit about some numbers. So by the numbers, we have U.S. women business owners. There's more than 9.1 million firms that are owned by women across the country, which generate about $1.4 trillion in sales and employ nearly 8 million people. So those are big numbers. So we can see how important the role of women business owners are to the nation's economy. The next slide, we have information from the Minority Business Development Agency. And I encourage you guys to go on their website, mbda.gov, and you'll find out a lot of cool stuff. You'll find out demographics, how many Asian Americans are there contributing to the nation's economy, Hispanics, Black, African American, Native, Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders, all minority firms, etc. There's a ton of data on there, and obviously this slide has a lot of information, but I'll just quickly point out that there are about 8 million minority-owned firms in the U.S., which is a 38% increase since 2007, and I think this data is coming from 2012. So it's really, really great to see the increase in minority-owned firms in the U.S. In the next slide, it's also by the NBDA. We have a distribution, a map here of the nation, and you can see that California and Texas have the greatest number of U.S. minority-owned firms by state, so 1 to 2 million people, 1 to 2 million minority-owned firms. So that's really, really awesome. We're proud to be from Texas, of course, but we can see that there is a lot of need for growth also across the nation. So next slide, I have some information on the university landscape too. So I gave a few, a bit of information and stats on women and minority-owned firms, but there's still a lot more improvement that we can have. And then I think a lot of that stems from university involvement. So if any of you students out there, if you've heard of programs like 3-Day Startup or University Innovation Fellows, you're pretty lucky to have been part of them, but if you haven't, then you should make sure that your university invests in those programs. So 3-Day Startup is a program that our university invested in a few years ago, and we saw a great, our university, by that I mean Texas Tech University, and with that we saw that there were a lot of students who were interested in entrepreneurship and innovation, and they were giving rise to their own startups. And before that, we didn't really have a lot of that involvement from our student body. Next slide is about University Innovation Fellows, and that's a program that's currently run by the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design, the D School at Stanford University. So Stanford in the middle of Silicon Valley, it's really, really awesome, but what this program is doing is that it's teaching fellows across the university and across the university landscape and in the country, but also across the world, and same with 3-Day Startup, how to really encourage entrepreneurship and change the landscape at their own universities. And Alex and I and some others that are also involved with NCET 2 are all working on that on our own campuses, and we're also looking at the shortcomings of our universities when it comes to providing students with resources they need to give rise to their own startups. So moving on from all of this information, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about my background. So my background is obviously in mathematical biology. I'm a PhD student, but I've always been interested and passionate about entrepreneurship. And here's a photo of my team and I participating in the inaugural Tibetan Innovation Challenge in New York City. And at the end of this challenge, we had His Holiness the Dalai Lama give us the prize. Basically, this was a competition, business plan competition, hosted by the University of Rochester, their Center for Entrepreneurship, and we actually won this competition. And now I'm currently in the process of building this startup for Tibetan refugees in India and Nepal. So just why I brought that up was because it's important that our universities cultivate this culture of entrepreneurship, because without that I would never have found out about this competition or have participated or have the wonderful experience that I've had in the last 2 years. So that's a little bit of background on me. So let's go forward with the rest of today's agenda, and I'll give Gwen Walker a couple minutes to just talk about her background before I start asking her some questions.
Great, Saba. Thank you, and thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and kind of share some of my story with you guys. I think what you're doing is awesome. So my name is Gwen Walker, and I am originally from Ohio. I attended the University of Notre Dame, and I graduated in 2005. Once I graduated, I actually took a job with Whirlpool Corporation selling appliances, and they relocated me to Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is where I worked for the last 10 years or so. That's also where I started my running club and kind of turned it into a business, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But recently, I was relocated again with Whirlpool to Lubbock, Texas, which is actually where I met you, Saba, which is awesome. And so now I work here, and I'm actually planning to start a branch of my business over here too. So it's all working out well for me, and I'm happy to be here.
Yay, thank you so much, Gwen. I want to talk a little bit about your running club. Tell us a little bit more about it. What inspired you to start it?
Sure. So I've been a runner for my whole life. I started running when I was 11, and I participated in team sports in grade school and high school and college too, actually. So once I got to Albuquerque, I was a little bit alone out there, and I wanted to make some friends. And I think that being active and picking an activity is the best way to do that. So after I'd been there for a few years, I kind of felt like there was an opportunity, I guess, in the running community in Albuquerque for a more like women-focused running club, because I saw with myself and all my running buddies, we were supporting each other, we were running races together, but there wasn't really, it wasn't organized within us to where we could really tap into the power of the group. So about 4 years ago, I started a running club. I did not start it with the intention of making it into a business, but I have a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, because I come from a family of small business owners. And once I started my running club and it kind of gained some traction, I saw the opportunity to turn it into a business and really do something with it in the community. And that's kind of where we sit today. We're currently at 150 dues paying members. I charge them dues as a way to structure the business. And with the dues money, that's what I use to run the business. And I use it for multiple things, but I also use it as an avenue for fundraising. So that's been something really cool that the business has been able to do. We actually were able to donate just under $5,000 to local nonprofits and other worthy causes in Albuquerque last year. So it's been a really fun ride.
Wow, that's really awesome, Gwen. I mean, you talked a little bit about, seeing a need in your community and being a woman and trying to find a community within the new place you found yourself in. You talked a little bit about that, and I think that's the core of entrepreneurship and innovation is when you see the need, you do something about it and become entrepreneurial and really make a difference. So that's really, really great to hear about that. So do you want to keep expanding your business? And I can see that you're going to bring it to Lubbock and maybe have it kind of branch out a little bit more.
Yep. Yeah, I have plans to start a branch over here in West Texas. I already have some members recruited, and I even have kind of a master plan to have the two groups interact from time to time and have some group, fitness and running competitions where we all get together and exercise together and support each other, but also raise money for really fun causes. So, yeah, that is in the works.
Wow, that's really awesome. Well, I'm going to do my best to participate in that.
Yep, you're on the hook.
So yeah, so moving on from your background with your running club, I want to talk to you a little bit more about your internship experience in DC and how it was like for you to be working under First Lady Laura Bush.
Sure. So Notre Dame has a variety of study abroad programs, and one of them is a program in Washington, D.C. It is considered a study abroad program, even though it's not really abroad, but they pick, at the time, this is back in 2003, at the time they picked 20 of us who applied to do it, and we got to live in Washington, D.C. for a semester, and we were all in charge of securing internships while we were there, and we also had to take courses while we were there, and those courses were taught by Notre Dame alum, which was really cool. But, in the process of finding and securing an internship, that was all on us as students. We had to go out and we had to apply for different places, and just kind of on a whim, I applied to intern at the White House. I thought it would be kind of a cool gig. Never really thought I would get it, but I did, and so I was the scheduling intern for the First Lady, for her director of scheduling, and so I got a lot of great experiences out of that.
Cool, that's really great. So can you talk a little bit specifically about your experiences there and what were some of the lessons you learned?
Sure. So as the intern for the director of scheduling, I was kind of in charge of any scheduling requests that come through the First Lady, and it's really kind of cool to see. She gets invited to all sorts of stuff. She gets invited to like kids' birthday parties. She gets invited to big formal events in DC and elsewhere. And I actually credit that internship with kind of teaching me how to say no. And I think that in our society, and especially as women, we have a hard time telling people no, or feeling like we're disappointing someone. So I really credit that internship. I got all sorts of requests for the First Lady, and I was kind of the buffer between all of the mail for her pouring in, inviting her to things, and between the buffer between that and her scheduling director. So I had to say no to a lot of things that would have been really cool for her to go to, but she has time limitations just like we all do. And so it's really important, I think, especially as a business owner or as a leader in the community, or whether you're a student or an employee or whatever, it's important to put boundaries on your time and know what you can say yes to and what you need to say no to. And there's a nice and professional and respectful way to say no, which I like to think that was my big takeaway from that internship, was it taught me how to respectfully decline.
Wow, that is a really, really, really great and important lesson that I don't think I've still learned, but someday I will do that. That's really awesome. So I want to mention a little bit to our audience about the lack of diversity we have on the Hill, both in terms of the number of women working or interning on the Hill, and also in terms of the minority backgrounds of people who are actually working up there. So if you I don't have all the statistics here because I just wanted to highlight Gwen's story, but if you just look up and look at different statistics on minority involvement on the Hill, you'll see that there's a lot of disparity. So I just wanted to ask Gwen. I know Gwen was working at the White House in a separate section compared to where all the other interns worked, and but can you talk a little bit about the diversity, if any, that you saw? I know that was 15 years ago, and here we are, 2017, but I feel like we could conclude that not a lot has changed since then.
Sure. Well, what I saw when I was at the White House, and this is just kind of based on a couple of interactions that all of the interns had as a big group together, but it was mostly male. mostly white. So there was not a lot of diversity. It would have been nice to see more, but at the time it was not there, and I'm not sure what it looks like today because it's been a while since I've been back there. But yeah, I would say I think my numbers could be a little bit off, but I think that the White House accepts roughly 200 interns every semester. And most of the interns that were working with me for the First Lady were actually women. But if you looked at the group overall, it was primarily male. And not that that's a bad thing, but that's just what it was.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely not a bad thing for sure. It's just that some more equality would be really great. But hopefully, with the work that we do with this committee and also with other groups across the nation, we could make a difference in that, however little that might be. So we'll continue on with the program. And Gwen, thanks a lot for being here. You'll stay on until the end because we may have some questions from the audience. So. Thanks a lot for coming out and speaking with us. I'm going to hand it over to Alex now.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Gwen, for calling. So going from Gwen, who has her own company, we're going to talk to Audrey, who is a woman in a STEM field. She is pursuing her PhD. Audrey, you want to give a little bit of a deeper background into yourself and what you're doing up in Boston?
Sure thing. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, I'm Audrey. I'm currently a third-year PhD student studying molecular biology. I started in biology when I went to MIT. I studied antimicrobial resistance, and then after that I went to go work as a research assistant in a stem cell lab at the Medical College of Wisconsin, where I studied heart development. But while I was out in Milwaukee, I joined what's called a makerspace, the Milwaukee Makerspace, and I met so many wonderful entrepreneurs and people who were tinkering with their world around them, and they wanted to learn about what they were doing. And I got the bug. I decided I wanted to try and learn how to make a go-kart, so I made a miniature go-kart with the Milwaukee Makerspace, and I raced it around the country with the Power Racing series. And with that experience in both biology and design, I entered an interdisciplinary program at the Boston University, and I ended up in a bioengineering lab with Dr. Kathy Klaprich. And here, this is where I'm working on a medical device that could take a patient sample and process it and detect bacterial infections. And this device actually, a little bit before my time, turned into a startup with a previous graduate student as a founder and Dr. Klaprich as well. And they're currently working at the Harvard Innovation Lab to further their startup.
Right.
But me personally, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is this Harvard Innovation Lab, is this kind of like an incubator, accelerator?
It is, yes.
Okay. And what is the status of this startup right now? Do we have a working prototype? What is this device, what's this med tech device look like?
Well, when it was still in the lab, it was definitely a very good working prototype. It was a small disposable device that was made out of adhesive that you could actually go and buy at an office supply store and then fold it together along with some different types of paper. And the device would work on paper fluidics, which is pretty much how the paper or how fluid would move through the paper. And this device successfully detected HPV, which is a virus, in different patient samples. So after that became a publication, the developers felt they could contribute or use this device to contribute more to consumers and investigating its technical understanding any further. So with that, they decided to make their own startup.
Right. And so it came out of Boston University and now it's at Harvard. Audrey, can you talk a little bit about the resources that have come from the university, how they've supported you? What does licensing the technology commercialization look like within, this Jane Diagnostics?
Well, from Boston University itself, it was mostly in terms of intellectual property. With BU, they're trying to formulate a patent for the device that they've built, and that's where they get from BU. But now that Natalia, the co-founder, has gone over to Harvard and using their innovation lab as an incubation space, they're competing versus other startups, and in Harvard's business plan competition, they were 15, or they were one of 15 that were selected out of 200 total applicants. So they're using the resources and network at Harvard to build and incubate their own startup.
So impressive. So I know we've talked a little bit about this. What's it like to live in Boston? I hear there's a pretty good startup culture, and I know that these resources and enthusiasm and a good working startup culture within the city is so important for these young companies. So can you expand a little bit on what it's like?
Well, Boston is a wonderful place for startups, especially for biotech startups and medical devices. It's a very competitive community, but it's very good and supportive. Like, there are many experienced people around you to lend you a hand or let you borrow some equipment or give you advice. And this is incredibly true of the college community out here. Like, there's Boston University, there's Harvard, there's MIT, there's Northeastern, there's all sorts of different well-structured university places that can help with all sorts of startup.
And do these universities push entrepreneurship and innovation through their classes? Do the student orgs take care of that? I mean, how does the community become so engaged in innovation?
Well, at Boston University, there's a very, very strong entrepreneurial culture and clubs. There's entrepreneurial clubs for graduate students and undergrads alike, and that's through the Questrom School of Business. And then they're also approaching us researchers as well. Like, I come from a basic science background, so coming into Boston University, I had very limited experience in terms of entrepreneurship and that kind of mindset. However, BU, they have a very wonderful kind of career development program where they give us seminars and boot camps, if you will, and different options to allow us to learn about these different entrepreneurial aspects, like product design or pitching our ideas or developing a resume, like all sorts of wonderful things. And there's a lot of interplay between, say, the researchers like me and the entrepreneurs. Like, they invite us to, or the entrepreneur community invites the scientists to go and see their conferences, and it's really fun. It's super fun. I love it.
Right. So yeah, we know these are, important in all these outreach programs, so how you draw people in. Just like you said, you caught the bug because you were introduced to a makerspace. So I want to go back a little bit and tell our audience what a makerspace is, and it's essentially just a lab where you can go in, you can design whatever you want, build whatever you want. I'm curious what was in that first makerspace, Audrey.
Oh goodness,
in terms of
that
like,
makerspace.
yeah.
It was huge. It had a woodworking place, metalworking, there was a giant place for storage, a craft lab, and then a wonderful meeting space. And it was in Bayview, so it was like in a wonderful part of Milwaukee that had like a lot of good coffee and other small businesses, and it was remarkable. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Right. These are really handy. I mean, makerspaces, I think, are great for universities, and I know we've pushed Texas Tech to kind of get one going and have a more formal makerspace, but they really are just such a good outlet for students to become involved in this community and really go get some creative energy out and see what they can come up with.
That's so true, yes. Boston University has a couple of as well. They've got Epic, which has so many really kind of complicated and intense equipment, but they've got like so many people there who can like help train you and help you understand the aspects of the equipment. And then also there's Tinker for more, or there's another makerspace called Tinker, which is more for less complicated things. But they're both wonderful makerspaces designed for just helping students engage more with entrepreneurship.
Right, I definitely agree with that. All right, Audrey, well, thank you so much. It was so good hearing about that medtech startup and your experience with makerspaces. We are going to go ahead and move on to a question and answer with the audience. So you guys can type those into the chat chat box and your control panel, and we will be taking those. I think while those questions come in, Saba is going to talk a little bit about the University Startups Conference Demo Day. That is on April 20th of this year. Saba, you want to give a little bit of a briefing on that?
Okay.
Oh, okay, we have our first question. So it says, how can 9.1 million women own firms only employ 7.9 million people? Does that mean they aren't counting the founder, or who may not be drawing a salary in some startups? Saba, you want to take this one? I know this was your statistic.
So all of this data came from the MBDA and the census and some other websites that are, pretty credible. So I'm not really sure about the answer for this question, but yeah, it probably does mean that they're not counting the founder, who may not be drawing a salary in some startups. Yeah, I'm not really sure why this is the case. Maybe it's because a lot of these women-owned firms are not as big as they could be, and maybe that's where we need to, improve, but I'm not really sure about that. Is there another question we have?
Okay. So as entrepreneurs starting up, would you elaborate on relationship building, on how you strategically develop this component in your business plan?
Oh, that's a really good question. Gwen, do you want to answer this one?
Sure, I can take this one. Let's see. So I guess as far as relationship building goes, I actually do a lot of that in my primary job, which is working for Whirlpool and selling appliances. So I was able to kind of bring some of that experience over when I started my running club. And I think that since I was doing something I was passionate about, I was able to draw on that and really kind of influence people, whether it was to recruit members of the running club, to recruit sponsors, anything like that. Relationships are so important, and I think a lot of the things that we get done in this life and how successful we are kind of determined by those relationships that we have with people. So yeah, I would say I kind of brought some of that experience over from what I was already doing, and for me it was a really, really big and important part of the business, building it, keeping it going. It's still a really big part of it, but I credit a lot of it to the fact that I was doing something I was passionate about.
Right, I think that's really sage advice. And I know working, it's kind of on a different level, but working with the university to push innovation entrepreneurship, to get more resources, to build a maker space, to have, commercialization programs, it's really been so beneficial for my group at Texas Tech to just have a good, solid relationship with at least someone in administration. And we know, we have someone we can go to, and she trusts us, and she knows, we're carrying on what the students want, and what we're pushing for is really important, and it's good for our education. So having someone a good relationship that can champion for you too is really important. Do you have another question? All right, so would you elaborate on how you address meeting and maintaining regulatory compliance in terms of local, state, and federal in a cost-effective manner? This one is for you, Gwen.
Well, I guess I'll just address taxes. As a small business, we all get taxed, and I would say the way I do it in a cost-effective manner is to just make sure that my due structure is enough so that it covers, those types of expenses. I have it's a slightly different business model, since what I'm selling is more of a service as opposed to an actual goods. I have an online store where I sell some sisters gear, but the bulk of the money that comes in for the business is service based. It's based on dues or events that I coordinate. So I would say, as far as being cost effective, it was pretty easy to do, because I just calculated out, what the money coming in, how much is going to be taxed, and then I priced dues accordingly. Hopefully that is a good answer.
I think so. I think that's helpful, especially for, the structure you're working with, which is a club. Yep. All right. So next question is, can you speak a little, please, about how to become an NCET 2 University Entrepreneurial Fellow and exactly what that entails? Thank you. Okay, so becoming an NCET 2 University Entrepreneurial Fellow is quite easy. You can go to ncet2.org, and there's a bunch of committees that you can join. These committees have weekly conference calls, so we talk about what we're doing on our own college campuses. We talk about the demo day that's coming up, how we're going to get people out there, panels, and then hosting webinars just like this. So that can all be found at ncet2.org, and it's a really great program. It's a good network. There's great people, and I've learned a lot. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Saba or Audrey. They are integral members of this committee and NCET 2.
Yeah, definitely go online at ncet2.org and sign up for a committee that speaks to you if you're passionate about women and minority issues, and if you're passionate about education and entrepreneurship, startups in general. You can go ahead and sign up, and we have weekly calls, like Alex said, and you can stay involved in those. And then the director of NCET 2, Tony Stanko, he's a great mentor. All the staff at NCET 2, they're amazing people, and they have a great network that they can connect us with if we want to pursue different opportunities. If we have an idea and we want to pursue it, we can definitely do that, working with NCET 2 and alongside the rest of our committees. And these committees are obviously largely made up of students, and it's really great working together.
Perfect. Is there another question? All right. It says, I'd be interested to hear what are the perceived unique challenges women have in scaling up viable business models and accelerating business growth.
I think I'll just say a little bit, and maybe Gwen has some other things to say, or maybe Audrey. But I think in general, it sometimes can be hard to pursue business growth, whether it's in terms of trying to get more capital or just trying to have growth in general, just because there is still that perception. I mean, like, the startup and tech industry is still largely dominated by men, and so a lot of this entails, unless you are some intimidating woman, like it seems like it's kind of hard to get a lot of things done. You just kind of have to, like Gwen said, you just have to know when to say no and when to say yes. And so this is a very subjective question, and I guess for me, being a minority woman trying to do a startup, there is still some of that perception that the society kind of projects onto us. And I mean, this is 2017, and it still hasn't quite changed. I was recently at the South by Southwest conference, in the interactive and general conference, and it was really amazing to see a lot of women speakers talking about their startups and their businesses, but mainly most of this space is still largely dominated by men, and I think we can definitely do a lot to improve in this area. Gwen, do you have anything to say to that?
Yes, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. So, I mean, I will tell you that both in my primary job, which is sales, and also in my business, I mean, I think that as women, we do get questioned, and I think as women, we need to. It's important to come off as A, knowing what you're talking about, but B, also making sure that you know what you're talking about. I mean, I can't tell you, it's been multiple times that a comment has been made to me, oh, you must have gotten your job because you're a good-looking woman. I mean, I've heard that so many times. And while I'm frustrated by it every time, my response is always, I stay friendly. And sometimes I'll be like, oh yeah, that's totally, I'll just kind of throw a little bit of sass into it, like, yeah, that's the only reason I got my job. I don't know anything about appliances, or, I don't know anything about managing a running club. I mean, to me, it can be easy to take those comments as derogatory and offensive, which they are. But to me, if the reaction from our end is more of like a confident, like, show them that you actually do know what you're talking about, I think that's the only way to break stereotypes, because stereotypes will exist, and the only way to get past those is to just, prove them wrong. And I think, I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but those examples were the first things that came to mind when I read that question. And I think it's just a matter of actually, making sure you know what you're talking about, and making sure that you are confident about it, and then not being afraid to, kind of give a joke back, or kind of, just brush it off. You can't take things too personally in this life. That is another lesson I've learned.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Gwen. I totally agree with all of that. I know we have a lot of questions. We can only take a few since we have just a couple minutes left.
Right. Okay, so the next question is, are there any unexpected challenges you encountered entering the business realm from academia, and any benefits?
Audrey, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah. Well, one for unexpected challenges, I would say, is that it's a very different kind of networking world, where in academia it's very much of like where you're from in terms of university support and like where you've published. In the more business world, it's more like who you know. It's very much directed to like who you know. Some other challenges is that it's just a different writing style as well. Like writing in academia is very dense and very technical, while writing in the business realm, you have to work more on selling your work almost, which is what business is essentially, right? But it's you have to make it more approachable, which is good for any scientist to be able to do. But as a younger scientist, it is something that I'm currently learning. And then for benefits, I would say that the biggest thing is just like learning and appreciating your own creativity. Because like in science, a lot of times like your creative outlook on how you approach your work isn't that valued. Like it's not something that is encouraged in students. So like but you're not really told to like try this other approach. Like you say, you do something that works. But in the business realm, if you're not creative, it's just not as good for you, right? Like just being able to like look at different approaches, thinking out of the box. I love it. It's my favorite part.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to do a couple more questions, but we're running out of time real quickly. So what's next? All right, as an entrepreneur business owner, how has your experience positioned you to help others pursue the same?
I can take this one. So, when I started my running club and then kind of started turning it into a business, I was met with all of these opportunities as far as helping the women who were in my club. And I will say it has been an absolute pleasure to be able to help some of them like just kind of grow and chase their goals. I've got one of my very good friends is in my running club. She started her own gym out of her garage where she is a personal trainer, and she is experiencing great success with that. I also help the local running shop. He and I have kind of partnered up, and he's my main sponsor, and I funnel business his way, and it's been awesome to see him grow his business. So I think that, if you can start your own little like successful thing going, I think that the most important thing to do actually is to kind of bring others with you and help them to also succeed, because if you surround yourself with successful people, and you're all working together to be successful, like it grows so fast, and it's just a really satisfying experience. I have very much enjoyed helping other people.
Perfect. All right, last question. So, awesome session. Can you talk a bit about why it's so important to focus on diversity and gender equality in entrepreneurship? I think I can start this one off. I do know, I mean, I had the opportunity to go to Google last year, and we trained at Google, at Microsoft, and at the D School, and Google works really hard on increasing their diversity. They still aren't where they want to be, but they've done a lot of research, and they've found out that the value of the product they create when they have a more diverse set of minds that it's coming from is exponentially greater than had they had the same kind of people and same backgrounds and experiences working to produce something. So really, you look at it, I mean, they create better products, and it's also a lot better of a workplace. I mean, that's why Google is really working hard, and it's a great place to work and very inclusive culture. Is there anything else to add?
Yeah, I agree. And from a mathematical standpoint, numerically and statistically speaking, if you just add more diversity in different types of people from different backgrounds and different mindsets, and just a different group of people all in one place, and you look at the types of ideas that are generated, you're going to have a greater frequency of better ideas, of good ideas, just numerically speaking. So it just makes a lot of logical sense to include gender equality and diversity in entrepreneurship, and I think the scientific world is definitely getting there, but in terms of just generally in business or entrepreneurship and in the STEM fields, humanities, everywhere, it's really important to ensure that gender equality is met and that there exists diversity. So I think we're out of time now. Alex, do you want to close this up?
I can. I just want to thank everybody for being here. It's been a really great opportunity to talk with everybody, and I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.